everyone, welcome back to Ambbali Art Cafe, and today I'm here again with another tutorial for all of you. And let me tell you, the subject today I have picked is very beautiful, and a scene that I have done from a place that is very close to my heart, and it's very beautiful. It's a scene from Santorini, Greece, and this is a very beautiful, lot of light. I have played with a lot of light, lot of vibrant colors, and also it actually the entire process, the tutorial, the shooting, entire process gave me so much of joy, and I hope you'll enjoy the tutorial as much as I did while doing it. And actually now it is because of the situations, we are accessible to very limited travel, and I'm missing all my plein air works and my workshops. So I just thought of picking up this particular subject to just to give boost up to my wanderlust whatever you say. So it's like I have done this painting, this one. So this is the one. This is a beautiful scene from Santorini, Greece. So you can see a lot of light and shadow works, and a lot of vibrant colors are there. Very simple work and very simple tutorial, yet very beautiful. And before that, doing the final tutorial, I have done few draft works, like this kind of small demo I did about the elements that I have used in the final tutorial. So it is just to understand the elements better. So once you try this at home, you practice these elements before doing the final painting, it really helps you a lot. So I'm going to show this one also in the tutorial. And also I did this color study because I was little confused about the door color, and in the real picture it was a blue, and I never wanted to do it a proper blue thing. So I did few color study, and I'm going to illustrate the color, that how I mix the color and what are the colors. So let's get started. Let's start with this, and I hope you will enjoy the video. And if you make this painting, do not forget to share with me. And if you enjoy the entire process, subscribe to my channel, press the bell button, and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and let's start the tutorial. Have a great day. So here is the color study that I have done before doing the final painting, and I wanted to do the doors of my own color. Like I wanted to create something of my own, very different kind of green, or I never wanted to do the blue one. So and before that I also thought this is a good opportunity to just to understand this pigments a little better, and I have just taken this opportunity and just did this color study. I hope you will find it helpful. So this is this is like a mixture of different brands. This is a Cinereous blue from Sennelier, and this is French ultramarine and Cinereous blue from Sennelier only. This is a mix of Cinereous blue, French ultramarine, and forest green. All the pigments are I have used from of Sennelier brand. This one is a Daniel Smith green Pathelo green. So you can see the mix of these three pigments and this are quite similar, though in the real life, maybe not on the screen, but this is on the real life, this is a little vibrant and little more saturated. This is but this is equally good, so if you don't have Daniel Smith green Pathelo, like sometimes you are you are a beginner, you are an amateur, and you do not want to invest so much on the pigments. Daniel Smiths are pretty expensive, so you can create the same color with this. This is a series by Sennelier Aqua Mini, which is it's a very mini it's a very mini packet and quite pocket friendly. Let me show you the packet. So this is the mini packet I'm talking about. It's a very small mini one. good for me because I do not use too many colors. So this is a kind of it's kind of pocket friendly, so you can mix these three colors like the cenerus blue and French ultramarine and forest green, and can create this quite similar to this one. The forest green is very vibrant and kind of opaque. Cenerus blue is transparent to opaque, like medium opaque you can say, and French ultramarine is kind of not opaque. Actually, it's kind of transparent. And this is the one. It is Daniel Smith Pathelo green and cenerus blue and French ultramarine mix. So with this I have mixed this one, and this is the result. This is more bluish. I really like this one. This is very good for sea, and to paint the sea, the waves. These are the very good color when you want to paint a very nice like seascapes. So to add those clean water effect, so this is very nice for this. And this is the dark version. I have added Sennelier's Payne's Grey with it to add some value. And these are the little value study of the same color. I have added Payne's Grey to this of these colors, and just wanted to add some intensity to the colors because I wanted to have this shadow effect. So this one I have done, this door I have done with cenerus blue, and this is the shadow. I have done a thicker shade of the Sennelier blue, or you can say the more of the pigment and less of the color. More of the pigments and less of the water, and this is less of the pigment and more of the water. So you can see without mixing any other pigment, there is a variation of the value. And this is I have done with a mix of Cenerus blue and this Pathelo green from Daniel Smith, and I have used a little bit of Payne's Grey with these two pigments for the shadow. But I was not very happy with the effect, and I have done this. And this is a Daniel Smith Pathelo green, and the shadow is the same. For the pigment I have used for this the shadow. So this is the same, like more of the water and less of the pigment, and this is the less of the water and more of the pigment. No other color is used. So this is the thing I have done this study because I was a little confused about how it will look on the paper. So whenever you are confused and you want to be sure about how the color will look on your paper, always do this kind of draft work. It really helps, and also every time you do this kind of study, it really enrich you with lot of knowledge, So this kind of study is very important, and also I have done this small element study. So let's start with this.
So I am using
I hope you will enjoy
vermilion red for this flower pot, and I have used little bit of burnt sienna with vermilion hue for the shadow area. I'll be adding a little bit of Payne's Grey and vermilion hue to intensify the shadow area. To make it more prominent, and that's how it is, a basic shape and value. Here I am using weight on weight technique for the bushes and the small flowers and leaves, adding forest green from Sennelier. Very abstract and very impressionistic approach. I have mixed cobalt blue with sap green for the darker value. and adding little bit of French cadmium red. Very easy, effortless. Make sure you do not use too much of water. This is the third illustration of the door, which is one of the main element of the main painting, and I'm using Pathelo green of Daniel Smith. If you don't have Daniel Smith Pathelo green, you can use the other combination that I have already shown in the color study. This green is very beautiful and it has a kind of tint of blue to it, and very good for seascape as well. I'm using this color because it really pops up on the paper. It looks very vibrant and nice, bright color. So very fast track illustration I'm doing, just adding few details on the door just to have an idea how I want it to look, not too much of details. This is the lamp shade, that another element from the main painting. I love doing this lamp shade, very satisfying they are, and gives kind of I don't know, it makes me happy. And they are a little tricky with the shape. You should do few sketches, before doing on the final painting. I'm using Payne's gray, not black, and very the body of the lamp I'm using Payne's gray with a lot of water, very light shade. And for the details I'm using the same pigment with less water and more pigment. So that's how it looks. I'm going to add some shadows here, and in the main painting the shadow really plays a very important part. There are lots of light on the main painting, so adding the shape of the lamp a little bit to make it look realistic. For the shadow I have used a slight of Payne's gray and ultramarine blue, and little bit of French cadmium red. That's how it is, and this is the main painting. Let's start with the main painting. I do not want any hard edges on the surface, and I am applying a little bit of water to have a softer look, so that the pigment spreads well on the paper and give me a smooth effect. This is a nice fluffy brush, mop brush. Good for flat wash. Cleaning up the edges where the pigments bleeded because of the water. So I have used soft tissues just to clean up the area. Applying the second layer of the same color to make it look a little brighter, because as you all know that watercolor looks lighter once it dries. So you should know that you should be having a vision, that how much your painting look vibrant and how much color or how much pigment you want to apply. Otherwise people complain that the painting looks very dull and not bright, because after drying it looks lighter. So I have applied the second layer of the same wash. I'm using a smaller brush because this is a little concentrated work. Doing the corners of the door using the same pigment, focusing more on the shape of the door. Since the wall is white, and I have to be very careful that the water does not the color does not bleed into the wall. So that is one of the reason that I'm using a defined a brush which is having a defined stroke, more controlled strokes. Second layer I'm doing, and I'm using now, this is for adding shadow, the same pigment. I have not mixed any other darker pigments. The same pigment I am using as a third layer for the shadow, where the pigment is more and the water is less. And I'm adding shadow on the door. There is a direct shadow of the lamp just above the door, and it's creating some nice shape on the door. These things really interest me, and really makes the painting also interesting. So, and also you have to remember while doing shadows that the thing that is closer to the object will have a direct shadow, will have a kind of a defined effect on the shadow, and the things that is far from the object will have a blurry kind of shadow, which is kind of having a blur effect, or the soft edges. Here we can see the shadow on the door, which is the shadow of the wall and the lamp, are having hard edges because they are the closest subject, and having like defined shape. This is a nice eraser, kneaded eraser. I use it for my watercolor. That doesn't leave any kind of dust on the paper. This is the white area of the wall near the door, and I'm adding shadow on that area. Since white reflects a lot of light, and it's bounce back a lot of light, so we have to work accordingly. And the green color of the door is also reflecting on that area. So these are the small things that we need to remember, and we have to observe in our real life. That really enriches you. The more you observe in the real life, the more you will get to know these things. Since we can see that since the wall is white, it is really bouncing light and creating a kind of reflection. Doing the knobs of the door, and the knobs are also having shadows. um, these are also direct shadows just under the object and very defined, having hard edges. So whenever we talk about shadows, the first thing comes on our mind is the color of the shadow must be black. That is a common mistake and the common wrong perception we have. The shadows are never black. It has its own color, and the color get influenced by different factors, like the source of the light, the tonal temperature of the light, and the local color of the subject. Like uh, if the door was red, and I would have used different pigments for the shadow. If the door would have been yellow, I would have been using some different pigments for the shadow, which I'll not use for the red door. So that also depends on the local color of the object. Also, it depends on the source of the light and temperature of the light. If the light is warm or the light is cool, if the light is yellow or the light is white, there are a lot of other factors that really influence the color of the shadow. But whatever it is never black. Next time when you make shadows, always zoom it and read it carefully. Carefully. It is either purple or grayish purple, or maybe a warm purple, or maybe bluish, or if the wall is on the warmer side, the red or yellow, then the shadows may be like little more of like the burnt sienna kind of color. So it really depends what on different other factors, that what will be the color of your shadows. I'm adding little bit of mix uh, ultramarine blue and crimson lake on the surface of the floor that is near to the door, and adding little bit of details to the door. Add little bit Payne's gray with Pathello green. So that's how the door looks. It is having prominent shadows of the wall and the lamp and of the three knobs there. And these are the direct shadows, as I said, and these are the closest objects that are creating shadows on the door. We need to remember the value of this two areas, like the shadows of the knob and the shadows of the wall and the lamp. The value of this has to be same. It is very important. I'm using Escoda number 10 rigger brush. It is a very nice brush and that holds good amount of water. Long bristles gives a lot of control, and the tip is very fine and very good for fine detailing, fine lines. Adding little bit of details, defining the adding some different lines that will define the door uh, nicely. Using Cenerous blue for the base of this part of the shadow on this side of the wall. There is a wall that is creating shadow on the floor. In the main picture, in the reference picture, there the lamp was just a there was no lamp, if I remember. Yeah, there was no lamp, there is just a small light on the left side of the door. And I wanted to add little more drama to the painting, and I just thought of adding a lamp shade here that will create a kind of dramatic effect on the door. As you can already see that the shadow of the lamp is creating a nice effect on the door, adding kind of a nice story. And the shadow of the lamp on the white wall is also the direct shadow, and having this definite one. And since it is the closest object, like the lamp is the closest one to the wall, so it's creating very defined shadow, not a blur one. And we're having good hard edges on the shadow. I'm using ultramarine blue and crimson lake, so it's kind of bluish purple. Since the source of the light is mostly from the right corner of the above, so the shadows are pointing down to the surface. And you need to remember the positions of all the shadows should be at one side, because the source of the light is one side. So you have to be careful with that. You cannot make a shadow of a thing that is on the right side, and then on the another object you are making the shadow on the opposite sides. That is not acceptable. You should understand the source of the light and work for the shadow accordingly. I am doing the flower pots. I have added little bit of vermilion hue with yellow ochre. For the body of the flower pots. Except one, all will be the same color. So that's how the flower pot looks. For the yellow ones, I have used bright yellow mixed with sunflower yellow and yellow ochre. Adding the nameplate, adding the shadow of the nameplate. And since I'm doing the first wash for the shadow, I'm using very light color, more on the bluish side. It is safer to do it in that way, so that you can modify it and with the temperature later in the painting. Adding window in the same way I did the door, the same color and the same technique. Second wash of the same blue, Pathelo blue from Daniel Smith, leaving the white areas for the flower. If I painted them blue, the brightness of the flower will not pop up, so leaving those areas white. So that's why I say that you need a little bit of planning, before painting. You need to sit with your subject and read with it nicely, do a few draft sketching so that you have a clear idea that how you want your painting to look like, where you need to leave the white areas, because once you paint them with color, you cannot go back to the same whiteness of the paper, and that is kind of frustrating. So to avoid that kind of mistake, the best way to do it, it's like having little bit of planning and doing few draft sketches and all. Adding the shadows of the wall on the door. This is also a direct shadow having defined line. Adding little bit of darker value to the corner of the window. Defining the line so that it looks nice and looks real. I let that window dry before doing any detailing work on that, and I will do this tiny flower pot here. So I'm doing a weight on weight technique, as I have shown in my last illustration in the second part, and I'm using crimson leg. Very impressionistic approach, not defining every leaves and every petals, just following the shape, value and the color. Adding cenerous blue for this area of the garden, to having a kind of harmony of the color. It's a very nice, beautiful blue. It looks very bright on paper and very refreshing color. I'm using the same technique, weight on weight. No defined lines, no minute details, just random strokes on the paper, on the weight paper. Adding sap greens and little bit of mix of blue and green to add darker values. Adding little bit of French cadmium red. not giving any kind of details of the flower, just adding few random strokes and adding different colors to make it look colorful. When you see this small uh, bushes area or the tree, even we do not see every leaves or every petal of the flower. What we see is the shape, is the color, and the shadow and the light, and that's what I'm trying to capture here, not going into the minute details, but just working on the shape and the light. This is a very nice bright green, forest green from Sanellia aquamini. I really like this green. It's opaque and very bright. It looks very beautiful on the paper. Very saturated. Since the door is dried, I'm adding some details to the window. Adding few lines and to give it a kind of 3D effect. Adding crimson lake to the nameplate. I was a little confused about what color I should use, and I decided on this color because it will complement and the color of the door and the window. So not very bright, I'm using slight like the hint of the color, not very bright. So well diluted in water. This is now I'm starting doing the shadows. This is very important part of this painting because it is all about here in the painting, it's all about the light and the shadow. So there must be some object near to the wall which is not visible, but creating very beautiful shape of shadows on the entire wall and on the plants and the flower pots, and creating beautiful story. So this is the important part of the painting, and the object must be very close to the wall and creating very defined shadow on the wall. I'm using Cenerus blue, little bit of ultramarine blue, and very slight crimson lake. As I said, white wall always reflects light or bounce light outside. So you can see that the white portion where the shadows are falling, it is bouncing the light as well. So instead of being very opaque, it is very transparent. Adding little warmth to this shadow, this side of the shadow, adding the same mixture of the pigment. Creating a harmony of the value. Here I am using a very light purple and adding shadows of the objects that is not very near to the wall, maybe some hanging ropes which is far away from the wall, and creating shadows which are not very defined like the other shadows we have done till now. So these shadows are far and very blurred and having soft edges. Adding some few hanging ropes on the wall, and I'm using very light Payne's gray. And for the shadow, very light purplish, bluish purple. So you can see on the wall there is a defined shadow of some pole maybe near the wall, and there are some blurred shadows that is falling on the door and the wall, which are not very defined and not very dark, so they are far away object. So the farther the object, the lighter the shadow will be. It will have more soft edges, and the closer the object, it will have more hard edges of the shadow. So if you have noticed that we have only painted the shadows, and how by painting the shadows we are actually painting the light, how it is creating a beautiful illusion of the light, a very bright light falling on the very bright sunlight falling on the white wall. And that's the beauty of the watercolor, I feel so. It gives immense pleasure to paint light in watercolor. It's too much of fun. Adding some shadows on the window of the plants. The shadows are falling on the wall of the window, and also on the door, also on the door of the window. With Crimson Lake I'm adding little detailing to the nameplate. I do not want it to be very prominent or bright, so I'm keeping it low key, little dull. There is a good amount of light falling on the flower pots and the flower, and it's creating beautiful effect. So painting the shadows on the flower pots, I'm using burnt sienna for painting the shadow. So you can see that for painting the shadows on the white wall, I have used mixed crimson lake and mixed up crimson lake and ultramarine blue. For the door, which is a green in color, I have used the same darker green for the shadow. And now for this flower pots, for the shadow, I am using a different pigment, so depending on the local color of the object I am doing. Painting the shadows of the flower that falling on the flower pot. And the direction of the shadows, that it is falling on the direction of the from right to left, it has to be consistent, as I said, because you cannot do, like, you cannot play with that thing. You have to be very careful. A little mistake on that can create a lot of confusion. You need to understand the source of the light, and uh, that defines, or that decides the direction of the shadow, which direction the shadow is falling. Adding some darker values on the greener areas by adding sap green mixed with cobalt blue. Very random strokes, not very defined. Just following the shape and the shadow. Added French cadmium red and crimson lake and deep orange for the flowers, and adding darker sunrise blue, mm, the intense one, to this flower pot to create a light and shadow effect. Some leaves or some petals of the flower, like, they're lying on the floor. Adding darker value near the area where the roots of the flowers or the bushes are, so that it can give a kind of nice three-dimensional look to the flower pots. and makes it look real. Adding deep orange mixed with French cad red to brighten up this area. Adding some leaves on the floor just to uh, add some kind of beautiful effect on the floor, on the white surface. It really looks beautiful. Some colorful leaves are scattered on the white floor. I call it like a beautiful chaos. So it's like a kind of very my own thing. You can add them or you might skip them. I love to add this kind of small details that pop up the painting. Defining the area where the shadows are falling of the pots of that pole, maybe giving it a definition. And that's how the painting looks. It's almost done. Adding few details. So it's like a very bright sunny day in Santorini, where the owner of this house must be resting inside the house, and that's why the door is closed. And it's a beautiful house, and I added few things like the flower pots and the lampshade, the nameplate, just to make it look little more full of life. My main aim was here to playing with the light. So these are the blur shadows that I told you on the door. Not very defined, having soft edges. Adding one more layer to the lampshade to make it look more brighter. And that's how the painting looks. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial, and once you make it, do not forget to tag me on your Instagram story, and I'll definitely share it on my story as well. Subscribe to my channel for more upcoming tutorials, and press the bell button so that you can get all the notifications. And if you like it, if you find it informative, and if you have enjoyed the process, enjoyed the tutorial, share with your friends and family, and keep on painting. And I'll be seeing you next week. So this is the painting. That's how it looks. I have done few changes at the end, just to make it look more full of life. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Stay safe and stay creative, and don't forget to share.